Dear Latinos, let's have a chat. Let's have a chat. We need to talk about a few things. The biggest thing that I want to talk about in this video today is colorism. It is something that is holding back our community because we refuse to acknowledge it. We refuse to see it as a problem, and it's a big one. The blatant racism and prejudice that we have in our own communities is being brought to the light, and it is blinding, okay? Blinding. Colorism has and probably always will be an ongoing theme in my life because I'm a mixed person. I'm mixed with Black and Mexican, so I have both of those point of views. To add a little plot twist, I'm technically adopted, and the family that raised me for the longest period of my life was Puerto Rican. So I also have that perspective growing up in the Caribbean Spanish type of atmosphere and what they had to say about things. The reason why I'm bringing this up now is because it's just been brought to the forefront of my mind that the reason why this is still such a big issue in the Latino community is because a lot of us refuse to acknowledge that colorism is the problem that it is. And it's a big one, a big one. A few of the occurrences that have happened recently that made me want to start talking about this was one of them happened on TikTok. And this Black Mexican-American man made a video talking about a similar issue. And he was saying that he feels like a Black man. And it's because society treats him like a Black man. That if he was in a room full of 100 men and they told the Black man to stand up, he would stand up as he should because he is a Black man. But he goes on to say that another reason why he feels that way is because he wasn't entirely accepted by the Mexican community. Now that sent the comments a coming, as you can imagine. As a Black Mexican-American woman, I decided to put in my 2 cents as well and agree with him, which caused another comment section. In all honesty, a lot of it was my hair. I felt like a lot of Mexican people didn't accept me as their own because of my hair, and I say that because I've been told that to my face. I had said in my comment that I've lived both on the West Coast and the East Coast. On the East Coast, I'm considered Hispanic. People come up to me speaking Spanish. They just automatically assume that I'm Hispanic, which I am. I'm half Mexican, right? The reason for that is because on the East Coast, there is a lot of different influences of different ethnicities. You have your Puerto Ricans, your Dominicans, your Cubans, you have your South Americans, you have your Mexicans. I'm from Florida, so that's an immigration state. So there was an influx of Mexican people, but also, I mean, you have like Little Havana, you know, I don't know how Orlando became Little Puerto Rico, but there's a lot of different Latino communities on the East Coast. Whereas on the West Coast, I lived in Los Angeles, the predominant Latino community is Mexican. And the Mexican people out there did not see me as Hispanic. They saw me as Black. And I just want to say that there was a lot of, I'm assuming, Mexican people in this comment section who were apologizing on behalf of the community for how we were treated. That they didn't feel that way, that there's places in Mexico that have people with our features in our hair, so on and so forth. And what I was saying about the West Coast, though, is on multiple occasions, I, as a mixed person, have been playing Guess My Ethnicity my entire life. And I acknowledge that I've never gotten Mexican, ever. Most times I get, you're Black mixed with what, you know? But the Mexican people that would come up to me or ask me, they're like, you're not Mexican, are you? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm Mexican. And they're like, no, you're not, because Mexicans don't have hair like yours. And if it wasn't about my hair, then it was my features. I'm 5'8". So they would say, like, you know, Mexican women aren't known for their tallness. And I'm like, again, I didn't say I was full Mexican. I'm mixed with Black. My favorite job with my favorite bosses to this point, I worked with a lot of Hispanic people at that job, and my nickname was Morenita. And so their rebuttal for that in the comment section was saying that Morenita is a term of endearment. And I didn't say it was a bad one, but we're all Latino. There's hundreds of other terms of endearment that they could have used, but they used Morenita for a reason. And that's what I want to talk about. I had a few Mexican friends out there. And one time we got drunk at a club, at a bar, whatever, and we were all drunk talking, and they both looked at me and was like, Lauren, I'm so excited we met you because we always wanted a Black friend. Like, you're so awesome and this and that and whatever. And at first I was like, oh my God, that's the greatest honor of my life to be the Black friend. But then I thought about it and I was like, no, I cannot be the representation of a Black woman in your life because I'm only half. And I love both sides of myself and my ethnicities equally, but I would not be a true testament to what it is to be a Black woman in someone's life. So I was like, no, guys, like, go out and venture into other parts of LA and make true Black friends. You know what I mean? And that really made me sad because as a Black Mexican American, I can't deny that I'm Black, right? Like, I cannot deny my heritage. You know, that is a fact, but I know I don't look Mexican, but I wanted to explore my Mexican heritage out there. You know, I wanted to be educated on the land of my people and their customs and their culture, because again, on the East Coast, I grew up with Puerto Ricans. I grew up more Caribbean Spanish. So when I lived in LA for the 3 years that I lived there, that was my time to become one with the Mexican peoples, and that just was not the experience that I had. The comment section, of course, you have your ignorant people who are like, well, the problem is you don't look Mexican. Never said I did. What does that have to do with being welcomed into a community? Then you had your very, very racist and prejudiced comments. And I'm just like, y'all just pray, go somewhere, you know, because you're just too ignorant to even have this type of conversation with. Another thing that happened recently is I was talking to a Mexican acquaintance. We were driving in a car somewhere and she asked me, she was like, okay, you're Black and Mexican. If you had to choose, what side do you identify with more? And I hate that question because I always say I'm a mixed American. Like, you know, I love both equally, I identify equally. But she was like, no. For the sake of this conversation, you have to choose. Which side do you think you identify with more? And I said a Black woman. And the look she gave me, I also told her that I felt more Black for the same reason as a content creator on TikTok, in the sense that I feel more on my Black side because I feel like that's how society views me. They view me as a mixed Black woman more than they view me as a Hispanic woman. And therefore, I feel like I get treated more like a mixed Black woman than a Hispanic one. And she goes on to be like, well, is it because you're not fluent in Spanish? Is that why you feel that way? And I was like, no, there's plenty of full-blooded Hispanic people that aren't fluent in Spanish either. I consider myself like 65 to 70% fluent because I can understand it pretty well. I just can't carry on conversations because, you know, I forget words or don't know words, so it's very broken. But I was like, no, girly pop, take that up with society. Like, I knew, like, from her tone that I did not give her the answer she wanted to hear, but not my problem. So she's over here looking at me and she's like, really? Like, you would identify more with a Black woman than you would a Latina woman? And I was like, yes, absolutely. And she's like, just giving me this look of like disappointment. And she's like, why? And so I told her, I was like, you know, I think my mannerisms, my hair, my features, the music that I'm drawn to. I recently just did salsa classes, and that kind of confirmed things for me too, because like as Black women, we move differently than Latino women. And so I was putting my own little flair on these dances just because I feel like as Black people, we move more with our upper body, whereas Latin people move more with their lower bodies. And if you're an immaculate dancer, you know how to master both, which was something that I actually struggled with in the dance classes. So I even brought up that it's just like even my movements, how I carry myself, you know. And she was just like, I mean, I guess. And I was like, okay, girl. Like, I could tell that she was disappointed with my answer. That kind of bothered me, but I let it go. What really, really made me sad about this story is that she then goes to my friends, right? My friends first before her friends, who, mind you, were both Hispanic women. And she goes and she's like, guys, I think Lauren is, you know, prejudice against Latino people, especially Latino women. And they're like, why? Like, why would you say that? And she goes on to say, or talk about the conversation that we had in the car. And that really made me sad because I'm like, that is what you took away from my conversation. The fact that I chose to identify more as Black disturbed you or disappointed you so much that you wanted to go to my Latina friends and say that you think I have an issue with Latina people. And it just was like, dang, another thing that happened recently that made me realize that a lot of Hispanic people, they just don't want to acknowledge that they're low-key kind of racist towards Black people or the other, you know what I mean? Going back onto the East Coast, let's talk about my tenure on the East Coast. So on the East Coast, again, I grew up with Caribbean Spanish people. I came to Florida when I was 11 or 12 and lived with a Puerto Rican family. So around 12, 13, I don't remember the exact age. I'm an outdoorsy girly, you know what I mean? I like to ride my bike. I was always outside. And I mean, again, it's Florida, so I was sweating. And so I remember one time I come into the house and my mom was like, whew, we need to get you some deodorant. I guess it's getting to that age. And I was like, okay. So, you know, next day we go to the store. She gets me my first like stick of Teen Spirit or whatever. And she told me to make sure that I put this on in the morning, you know, after I shower, especially because I'm Black. You know, Black people tend to smell bad. Their odor is more pungent. And so I had to be extra careful of my hygiene. And I was like, okay, like I was forced to relax my hair because I was told that this was not attractive. I also think in defense to my parents, because I was adopted, I didn't look like them like this in my natural form, right? I think with my straight hair, I was taller than both my parents anyway. And the majority of people around us knew my situation. So I don't think, you know, I don't think I had to have like straightened my hair for people to maybe think that I was their daughter. But like it was, you know, like clockwork. I would have to, you know, relax my hair as soon as my roots started showing. My mom did not allow me to sunbathe in the summertime because she didn't like my dark skin. She said it wasn't flattering, that I look better white. And I will say her and my dad weren't the only people that told me that. Like I have been told a lot of times that I just look better. I look prettier with paler skin, which I was like, So here's where things get low-key racist. I think the examples that I just said are kind of like microaggressions. But yeah, let's talk about the racist stuff. I grew up in the church too, super religious. My mom was the person that brought people together. So people were always at our house. We were always at someone else's house, always congregating, always going out to eat, talking with these people. So for a lot of my adolescent period, I was all up in grown folks' business and hearing things I probably shouldn't have heard. But one thing that altered my brain chemistry was experiencing mostly men, I will say this, but women as well, darker than me, dark as night, dark and beautiful, dark hair, dark eyes, 4C hair, I mean kinkier and coilier than my hair could ever be, refused to acknowledge that they were Black. I know Black, which we say that as a joke, but no, they were dead serious. They're like, no, I'm not Black. I'm Dominican, I'm Puerto Rican. And I'm like, babes, that's what your culture is, especially Dominicans. I don't get that one. But it was almost like offensive. You know, I wasn't allowed to date Black men because of, you know, whatever reasons. And so the comments would start as to why. The racism, the things as to why they are not Black, because Black people are this and Black people are that. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, I don't want to hear this. I think because I look Caribbean Spanish people around me felt comfortable saying these things. I didn't look Mexican as well, because another thing that made me start raising my eyebrows is I'm from the South, okay? I'm from a town known for NASCAR and cows. And there's a bunch of racist white people out there, but there's also a bunch of ignorant white people who I don't think know any better. So they would just classify every Hispanic person out there as Mexican. And boy, did the crash out ensue when you called a Puerto Rican, Dominican, or a Cuban person Mexican. And I'm not going to get into that specific conversation, because that's a whole other conversation that what I want to have. But I have witnessed grown men and women, mostly men, crash the F out when they were called Mexican. I also, again, I'm going to acknowledge, I'm not talking and I'm not referring to every single person from the Caribbean islands, right? I'm not referring to every Dominican, every Puerto Rican, every Cuban, every person from the Virgin Islands. I'm just saying that I have witnessed it with my own eyes. I have heard it with my own ears so much that it needs to be talked about. How a lot of Hispanic people don't even want to accept where they come from. They don't want to accept their African roots. I forget what actor, he was on a podcast, and this podcaster thought he ate, and trying to ask him why he always plays black roles. Like he always plays the role of a black man. And this actor's Afro-Latino, I don't remember if he's Cuban or Dominican or whatever. And he said something that stuck with me. He was like, just because our ancestors got dropped off at a different slave port doesn't mean we don't all come from the same place. And I was like, amen, hallelujah. Like a lot of Hispanic people have African heritage, yet man, are they racist. Colorism is the prejudice against your race, which is racism. So colorism is racism, racism is colorism. And the beauty about Latino people, though, and I really feel like you can't say this about any other ethnicity, is that you have your blonde-haired, blue-eyed or green-eyed, fair-skinned people coming all the way to your dark-skinned, dark eyes, 4C hair Latino people too, and everything in between, right? So we, I think, are the most diverse ethnicity. Like you really can't say that about any other ethnicity. I often take the long way to get to the point, and I'm coming to my massive point now. We need to start talking about how colorism is tearing apart the Latino community. But we also need to take that a step further and acknowledge where that comes from and why we still treat the Black community in the same way. Because our colorism in the Latino community stems from the racism that we inflict on the Black community and have inflicted on the Black community. And again, it's not all of us, but this year, I don't know what it is about 2025 that a lot of people in the Latino community, a lot of Latino people have chosen violence against Black people. You know what I mean? The thing now is because they don't think that Black people have been taking a big enough stand against the ICE and immigration issue. They don't think that they've been writing enough. They don't think they've been talking about it enough. And the reason why I said what I said in my video is because I don't blame them. I don't blame them one bit. I don't blame not one person in the Black community for not wanting to stand in solidarity with us as we fight this immigration issue in America right now. I told myself, Lauren, this is not the video for politics. And it's not. I'm not gonna go into politics right now. That'll be my next video. But Black people did their part. And I think that not only do we need to start healing in the Latino community, we also need to heal our relationship with the Black community. Now, what I don't understand is why Latino people are so accepting of the negative stereotypes that are perpetrated onto Black people, right? I don't get that. I don't. I had previously mentioned that I wasn't allowed to date Black men growing up, and one day I asked my mom why. I was like, why am I not allowed to date Black men? And of course, every negative, stereotypical reason came out of her mouth. That they're violent, they're going to hit me, they're going to abuse me, that they're not known for their fidelity, that they're uneducated, they're ghetto, that they don't make a lot of money. And I was like, well, damn. What Black man hurt you in another life? But it got me thinking, and also from my other experiences, the same negative stereotypes that are perpetrated onto Black people, right? That they're loud, they're aggressive, that they're ghetto, they're uneducated, they're dirty, they're broke, or whatever you want to say, aren't those the same negative stereotypes that are perpetrated onto the Latino community? You know what I mean? Like, it's it's literally the same. And there's this thing that has been talked about with the Latino community as to why they voted the way that they voted. Their actions in recent years or whatever is because of their proximity to whiteness. Their proximity to whiteness is a lot closer than Black people's has ever been and nor ever will be. And when I think about what's happening in the Black community, I think that they have reached a point in time in society that they've realized that, so they've quit. They're like, you know what? I'm done. I'm gonna create my own lane, create my own spaces, worry about what my community is doing, worry about, you know, educating and just existing in spaces that people don't want them there. Shout out to Beyonce, shout out to Sinners. You know, like, it's been a great year for Black people. And I think that's what keeps Latino people where they're at, is because maybe they have a closer proximity to whiteness. So they're thinking in their minds that they can kind of maybe get there at some point in time, when that's just not the case. And so the same things that white people have said about the Black community have infiltrated the Latino community and almost brainwashed them into thinking the similar things, when white people think the same of both groups, of both the Latino people and the Black people. And I don't understand why Latino people don't understand that. It's just like, you know, we should be on the same side, and I don't think that we are. I don't think that this issue is as big as people like to paint it on social media. That's why I just want people to start talking. So I'm gonna leave with a few points. To the Black people who feel like the ICE and immigration issue is just not their issue, it's not their fight, because you guys did your part during the election, that the Latino community needs to focus inward, which is true. We do. It is your fight because you're American. You know, I feel like all Americans, whether you're natural Americans, you were born here Americans, you did it the right way, as they say, Americans, whatever. Americans need to stand in front of and beside the undocumented immigrants. You know what I mean? So it's your fight on that side. Okay. I also just hope and pray that more people can understand that we don't need to make this issue bigger than what it is. Get off social media and talk it out in person. But I think that social media and people are saying whatever for clout. They're trying to rage bait, you know, because rage bait gets engagement, right? Like, you know, when I think about the Latino community and the Black community, we're fraternal twins. You know, we are so similar. We're the same. We come from the same places. Like, we don't need to be having these issues. But I will call out and continue to call out the Latino community, because y'all are wrong for continuously calling out the Black community all of a sudden on fights that are our own. You know, like, don't do that. No. So let me know your thoughts on what I had to say about my personal experiences, or if you think this is an issue in the community. It is. So don't be even trying to debate if colorism is or is not an issue in the Latino community. What you think about our actions and treatment towards the Black community. My next video will be about the prejudice I think that needs to be addressed in the Latino community against Mexicans and Mexican people. I've had to hear and deal with that specifically too many times for my own comfort, and I think that is an issue. That is a topic that needs to be brought to the surface, and it needs to be discussed. It showed in the election, and that one will be more political. I have my stats on that one, but stay tuned for that one. That one's gonna ruffle a few feathers. So